So now, we're about to start with our panelist discussion, but before we do that, I think it's only fitting that we give each one an opportunity to talk about, I've already introduced them through their biographies, but I'd like for them to talk about their organizations. I'll give each one about 5 minutes to let us know, about your respective financial institutions, what they are, what you stand for, how can everyone in this room benefit from them. Okay.
Yes, can I go? Thank you, and good afternoon now, and to everybody in the room. So I'm here representing the National Empowerment Fund, and I think it's important to understand where each DFI is positioned, so that you can know when to knock at the right doors, and you can know what kind of marriages exist in the sector, and one of those is with the GPF. So actually I'd like to congratulate the GPF on such an incredible milestone and for all the impact that has been unearthed over its existence. So congratulations to you. So the NEF is the only DFI that's solely mandated to grow BE. So I think that's important to understand as a starting point. So we fund businesses that are Black owned to varying degrees, and we have a preference, for women-led transactions or applicants as well. So I did scan the room when I arrived here, and I was thinking, next time we have another gathering like this, it would be great to have more representation from our female counterparts. But it also poses a question back to us as NEF, GPF, NHFC, Shiraaz as well, and the other participants in this ecosystem, to challenge ourselves as to what it is we're doing to crowd in more women-led business or development companies, property development companies. So we invest across all sectors of the economy, but in 2015, my team and I presented a strategy to invest more vigorously in the property sector. So we do participate in retail property developments, but our sweet spot is what brought us here, which is our investments in the student accommodation sector, social housing and affordable housing. And I think we've benefited greatly from some of the funding arrangements we've been able to enter into with the likes of the GPF, and also leverage of the skill set that exists within the different organizations. So we fund as the NEF from 2 million rand up to 75 million rand. We do participate in projects that are above that threshold through co-funding arrangements, as I've highlighted before. We have 4 investment funds, and we have the Women Empowerment Fund that cuts across. So that shows the intentionality to ensure that in each of the segments that we participate in, we are crowding in women and participation. So we do SME finance through our Imbewu Fund. We do rural and township development through our Rural and Township Community Development Fund. We also have a strategic projects fund that is tasked with starting new projects, so going through pre-feasibility studies to bankable feasibility stage, up until financial close, and then implementing those. And those are typically, transactions in the key sectors of the economy that have, mass employment potential. And the practitioners in this room would then find a home within what we call Umnotho Fund. So that is the fund that deals with our property funding products. We are quite intentional about unearthing Black economic empowerment, not just in the ownership structures of the businesses that we fund, but also in the management structures and also in how we procure. So it's important that the professional team is made up of Black companies, and also that the contractor is Black owned, and that when we look at your procurement spend across the board, 51% of that must be going towards Black-owned enterprises. So that's the key, call it nuanced criteria for how we fund in the property sector so that we can see exponential development returns. So we provide financial and non-financial support. We've got a business planner tool and a financial modeling tool that assists people who may struggle with putting together an application form that meets our criteria. We also then have pre-investment support through our walk-in centers across all provinces. We then provide post-investment support through mentorship, which I think is important to not just lend our companies and leave them to their own devices, but to give them support throughout the life of the project in whichever area we may have identified as needing improvements. So we do back office financial support, mentorship support, and we participate strongly on the steer codes of each of the projects and that we invest in, such that we be able to deliver projects on time and within the budget. So those are some of the lessons we've learned and look to deploy further to more transactions as we partner with the GBA. Thank you.
Let's get
Okay, good morning everybody. I hope you can hear me. Sorry, afternoon. I'm already trailing behind. My name is Azola Mayekiso, as has already been said, and I'm here representing the National Housing Finance Corporation, a corporation that is 26 years old, turning 27 years old this year. We really operate, I would say, in terms of our founding, mandate, we were really supposed to be instrumental, and we were founded by the Housing Act. On the back of that, by the Department of Housing at the time, which is now called the Department of Human Settlements. Really, our core mandate was meant to facilitate home ownership, particularly for people that are indigent in our society, because our mandate really cuts across. So we find we do have a bridging finance product for people that are delivering RDP or PNG or whatever it is called nowadays, but essentially fully subsidized housing. So we do provide those contractors with short-term finance in the form of bridging loans. But we also fund the gap market, so people that don't necessarily, with respect to their earnings, qualify for the fully subsidized housing, earning from 3,501 Rand all the way to 22,000 Rand. Obviously, I think gap housing would probably fall in the realm of 3,501 up to a cap of 15,000 Rand, and anything above 15,000 to the 22,000 Rand mark would then be the affordable housing units. Okay. What we also do, we are a national implementing agent for the National Department of Human Settlements with respect to the FLIS program, what used to be called the Finance Linked Individual Subsidy Program, which we've recently, at the end of February, the Minister relaunched it because we want for that program to be accessible and relatable. So we've changed the name to the First Home Finance product. That's what it is now called. And it is really designed to still very much benefit people who earn above 3,501 Rand up to 22,000 Rand. But I think, principally, we have actually introduced improvements to that program, because for the moment it funds people that are within those income categories that are able to actually raise mortgage finance. Okay, so it is a very much a mortgage finance product for the time being, and we've done improvements. We've tabled implementation guidelines for the approval of the Department of Human Settlements, and we are just awaiting for that approval. And what these improvements are, it's really to assist the people who earn absolutely nothing, right? So that income bracket, which is between 3,501 to 15,000 Rand, because currently, with respect to the market failure, in this sector, is that those people are not able to, there isn't, in fact, affordable housing stock. that they are then able to be able to fund mortgages on the back of. So currently, the statistics that we've seen suggest that only 1% of the people that earn below 15,000 Rand actually get to qualify for mortgages, which means that everybody else, 99% of the eligible candidates, obviously cannot access this subsidy program. And so what we've done is we've ensured that we can cater for people who want to build, utilizing their own savings, people who are beneficiaries of employer-assisted housing schemes, people who are, there are all manner of it, and I can take you through it if you're interested, but we've really tried to ensure that even if the housing stock doesn't currently exist, that then allows for these people to apply successfully for mortgages, they are able to tap into other means. We cater for things like mortgage-backed loans as well. People who are able to raise these mortgages from their own retirement savings that they've accumulated over time in order to facilitate the building of their own homes. So those are some such products that we do. What I would just like to say is that currently, where the failings of the NHFC have been, has been in the area of not doing enough with respect to transformation. And right now, our board has really been quite forceful with respect to saying we need to find black developers. So this is just, it's a call to action, it's an appeal to say we are looking for black developers. We are going to even go the route of incubating, particularly entities, businesses that are owned by designated groups, so the youth, persons with disabilities, military veterans, as well as women. So we are even go down to the extent of we don't necessarily want you to be an established or emerging player. Even if you just have an interest, we are going to take it upon ourselves to ensure that we walk the road with you. We provide not only the funding, but the necessary support that is required in order to get you there. Currently, one of the other things we do in our program management unit is that we work with the developers that are CIDB graded 1 to 3. So very much entry-level, contractors. And my colleague Viwa is in the room. Viwa, if you can raise your hand in case we have CIDB 1 to 3 people that are in the room, wherein we specifically, work with you in partnership with the NHBRC, by the way, to ensure that we walk the road of ensuring that you get promoted to higher CIDB levels. Both not only in terms of business management, tools, but also in terms of actually making sure that we award you work to do, so that ultimately you do meet the requirements in order to be upgraded to higher levels of grading. What else can I say? Yeah, so we're looking for you. If you are developers, if you happen to know people that in those income categories, because we are very much facilitating access to the government subsidy that is it's available to all members of the public, by the way, as long as you are a South African or a permanent resident of the country, you are eligible for the subsidy. So you obviously employ people, relatives, etc., but we will be going out to the market with a campaign to basically make this first home finance product, a household name. What else am I missing? There's a lot that we're doing. Yes, okay. So I think I'm going to leave it there, but suffice it to say that the NHFC has new energy. We have a new vision. We want to, deliver on our mandate. We don't want to be viewed as an entity, that has this mandate that was set 26 years ago, yet we haven't done much with respect to the delivery that people are going to fill on the ground. And just with respect to our partnership with the GPF, which is the most important thing I'm going to say now, we look very much forward to the collaboration that we are going to be doing together in terms of co-investing, for student accommodation, affordable housing, but particularly,
much. I think my two colleagues this side have said everything. We are not a DFI. I'm Lusanda, Netshitenzhe. We are private sector. We're a private sector company, but we partner with DFIs and we appreciate the support that we have. I want to talk about our products. I have my colleague. If you can move a little bit, Mr. Cameraman. Maybe Bonga, you can stand. He's our regional manager for Gauteng, so he's available in the room. Over lunch, we can answer all the questions about TAF. But we finance in inner cities, we finance in inner cities. We have an exciting product called Lizanne that finances in townships. But a more important product that I want to talk about is our Individual Equity Fund, because today is about celebrating GPF. Individual Equity Fund started 19 years ago, in 2004. It was supported by GPF as the first funder. I think it was 20 million rands. The CEO will be very happy to know that your role as a DFI who catalyzes these spaces means that today is not only a Gauteng product, it's a national product. Today has managed to bring in and leverage private sector investment. We have over 135 million rands that has been invested in people to support PPS because of your initial vision to support it. So today we want to say thank you to GPF. They are 20, I think it was last year we turned 20. We turned 20 this year. So we've been fellow travelers for a while. NHFC, of course, our shareholder in TAF 21. We always ask the question, what's the difference? TAF 21 is a majority shareholder of the business, followed by the NHFC. We have the conversations. But the important, I think, principle is to say the point that was made that national governments or sovereigns in the world have no more resources. The role of DFIs is to open up space to leverage the balance sheet of private sector. And I think GPF has done that for
Okay, so we've already heard from amazing guest speakers earlier on. So I hope you've taken questions there. So I'm going to pass. Isn't there anything you want to talk maybe in that space? I think that, I think our fellow delegates would love to hear from you, Mr. Shiraaz.
Not a problem. Thank you very much.
Thank
so
you.
the name is Shiraaz. I work in the investment and development unit. And we do, we've met a lot of you in terms of applications. So we have various programs that we offer from our initial mandate of social housing, then into rental housing, and the additional mandate. So we were one of the very first organizations that said, if you don't have a black majority shareholder, you can't deal with us. We went to the Shiraaz, we said social housing, we went to the NHFC, we went to TAF, and it was made that categoric. As government, we want longevity. It's not about service providers, we wanted shareholding, minimum 51% black shareholding. So I think the GPF has to acknowledge that we were the first. As Mandy would say, it was this impact investment that we didn't know we were doing, but we just knew that it was something we had to do. And so that became the Entrepreneur Empowerment Property Fund. And thereafter, we started seeing a phenomenon, particularly with the property we funded with Jayakody Housing Company, just over the Mandela region. All of a sudden, we saw all the students moving there. Why? Because it was so strategically located to Wits University. And then the HOD at the time for housing said to the GPF, let's look at student accommodation, because it becomes a subsector of the rental housing. And then we did student accommodation, again one of the very first organizations to say, let's do student accommodation, and we've got the likes of India and NHS to the party. So in a sense, we've been trend setting. Maybe Mandy's right there. We don't say our story to the best of our ability. But I think I'll leave it there.
Powerful. Powerful. Let's give all our panelists a thank you. So, let's start with the first discussion for the day. So the first discussion is as follows. How do we participate and facilitate the development of sustainable cities? I'll repeat it again. How do we participate and facilitate the development of sustainable cities? And I'd like to invite, actually let's do this. Let's go to Miss Khanyile, right next to me.
So I think you've captured the essence of this discussion quite aptly in the topic that we are talking about today, which is about meaningful and impactful collaborations. So the GPF and the NEF, we've got our limitations, but combined we can do so much more. So, we are constrained internally by perhaps our counterparty limits, but we can do more together. So the 25 million odd from GPF, the 40 million in one transaction from the NEF is so powerful, and we've seen how that plays a role. So one of the transactions we've invested in is called Mayekiso Gardens and Devlet Gardens. And throughout those two transactions that were our forte into social housing, making sure that people have decent homes in areas that are strategically located to areas of economic activity, thus enabling them to take advantage of those opportunities and be gainfully employed and provide for their families. So you can just think of the multiplier effect that comes out of delivering close to 2,000 homes in areas that are key, and be mindful of the ease of moving around within the various projects that we choose. So that's one of the criteria, looking at their amenities. So I think these partnerships need to continue, and I think we've done well in talking to each other as the public sector, but I think we need to do better in crowding in more monies from the private sector so that we can grow the pot and grow the impact that we're actually able to achieve. We've done well talking to each other to avoid silos, and I think together with the private sector we can achieve incredible, call it empowerment dividend, which is our slogan at the NEF for your equivalent of your ESG considerations. And this talks to the balance between the commercial returns that we must see to be viable and get the money back and invest it. And it's important why I must highlight the viability, because where you've got an organization like the NEF and the GPF unpacking a transaction, we are strengthening the internal controls, we are making the business case that much more viable and de-risking it. So we see the developmental returns, but each organization is able to see the return of capital and do even more with that. Thanks.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Let's pass the microphone over to Ms. Lusanda. Let's take it to our private sector. Thank you.
I think that we need to continue doing what we already do. I think that we are partnering, we're strategically looking at what areas need support. I think where we need to improve is that in our partnership with the public sector especially, we need to start saying what can we do in a both-end sort of approach. Because obviously public sector by its nature likes mega projects. And mega projects tend to be a little bit outside, on the outskirts. They're starting to be inner city a little bit these days. But I think that if we do both meaning mega projects as well as small projects, in areas that need densification, in townships, that you will see more impact because you support a starter entrepreneur as well as an established one. Because someone to do 100 plus units, that person must be not even emerging, maybe almost emerged to established. But you are in that approach, you're leaving out a lot of the small developers that are there with 10 units, 20 units, 30 units, and are addressing this issue of affordable housing in areas where it matters. In our 20 years, GPF I think mentioned earlier that we've developed 20,000 units to date. We also 20 years old. We've done with the small scale developers over 45,000 units. It shows the power of DFIs, like the initiative COBs and GPF, supporting private sector balance sheet and leveraging that to do more. Because we can never do a lot with the fiscus. Any government doesn't have pockets. I mean, we know that the time GPF wanted to do stuff, but they simply couldn't because they had to wait for an allocation. Because that's the nature of things. These things happen, money comes, and then they do wonderful projects again. But I think in that time, when they've put 20 million into Tuko and are waiting to put the next 20 million into Tuko in that time has been able to go to the next private sector player and say GPF has catalyzed this, put 135 million. So Tuko is now able to do more units while GPF is saying, okay, we'll support you more in the future and other developers more directly to do more. I think the point I'm making is we can only go far as a country and as a developmental state if we start saying this idea. I think we all don't like this idea of PPPs because it's a difficult concept. But it works when we all know our roles because the space is big. We all have a place in the market. We all have something to do in the market. But I think DFIs need to know that their role is to catalyze so that projects can be replicable, that they can be scaled, and that they can be sustainable. I think that's the only way.
Love it. Let's give a round of applause. I'd like us to pass the microphone over to Ms. Mandy. So, looking at exciting new trends as the environmental, social, and governance, and also looking at impact investing, how can that space, facilitate and bring about transformation within our inner cities?
Thank you for that. I think just going back to your last question, just to input on that, one of the most valuable things you can do is looking at your whole value chain. We're now sitting and we're looking at the intermediaries, so all these intermediaries from the private and public sector. Together, we know what the backlogs are, what the bottlenecks are. And there are strategic partnerships that can happen on the demand side, but also on the supply side, what can happen, and we need to identify those. In terms of impact investing, I believe, yes, we're talking about private sector funding, but where does this private sector funding come from? And maybe Lusanda, you guys being in the private sector and sourcing that kind of money, how do you guys do it? This impact investing practice, it looks like it could be an opportunity for us to play in that space because we're selling something more than just a financial return. Yes, we want financial return because it gives viability, but we also want something more that people, because the people who are living in units, they don't see that kind of financial viability, but they do see the social and environmental kind of benefits that they do from your units. So.
Love it. So, Ms. Mandy, while we're there, do you mind elaborating more on the opportunities that even lies outside of our shore? Opportunities with global funders who are looking to enter the space, who are in line with and share the vision of South Africa in terms of, improving our inner cities and participating in the human settlement space as well. Because I think there's extraordinary opportunities that are there looking to make strategic partnerships in South Africa.
I firmly believe that there is opportunity. Just to give you some stats, I think in the impact investing space, in developed economies, 67% of impact investing goes to infrastructure in developed economies, but in emerging economies it's only close to 7%. So there is an opportunity for us to, because they are buying something that's valuable, so there is an opportunity for us to expand that. The question is, how do we do it? And how do we position organizations like the GPF to be able to source this funding so that investors come to you and say, yes, what you're selling is what we want to buy.
Love it. Thank you. Miss Lizanne. Thank you. Let's give Mandy a round of applause. That was powerful.
I definitely agree with Mandy in what she said. There is definitely opportunity in that regard to seek international funding and position the institutions within South Africa to assist in that regard. I think an important point to make, and specifically on the sustainability aspect that you spoke about earlier, it's important for developers when we do look into approaching new developments and taking the sustainability aspect into consideration. Currently, the Stats SA is busy with their SDGs and the implementation of SDGs and integration of that into our everyday lives, development, funding, and so forth is very, very important. I think also from a market perspective point of view, it just puts you in a better position or competitive position in terms of getting funding and putting those developments out there.
Love it. Thank you so much. Let's give Lizanne a massive round of applause. Thank you, ma'am. Mayekiso. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I just want to weigh in on the sustainability conversation as well as access to global funding avenues. So I think, obviously part of the sustainability conversation has to be steeped also in the environmental sustainability, right? Because if we are to have these, sustainable smart cities, then it is essential that we are alive to energy, to developments in the energy sector. So I think it's going to be critically important for us to incorporate things like, renewables, launching of green funding initiatives. In fact, at the NHFC, one of the things that we are contemplating at the moment is launching a green fund, because principally, there is the Global Climate Fund that is available. I think it was seeded with $600 million that we want to definitely be able to tap into if we don't go direct ourselves, but we'll certainly go via the DBSA because they are already certified, to qualify for applying for that funding. So I think it becomes important that, we find ways of incorporating green solutions in the delivery of these green buildings. And part of it obviously has to do with solar systems and, installing solar systems, installing, proper roof insulation, taking advantage of, developments in technology in that respect. But also principally for me, I think, if we start engaging, educating ourselves, with a view of actually moving away from bricks and mortar, because we know that part of the bottleneck that has resulted in a circumstance where there isn't affordable housing stock that is being delivered at the moment is because of this insistence, on bricks and mortar. Whereas there are very much good, robust, and cheaper alternative building technologies that are already available in the South African market, by the way, manufactured here in South Africa. So I just think that we need to box a bit smartly to ensure that we are going to be able to bridge this gap in terms of the housing backlog that currently exists. And we just need to take advantage of everything that is available to us, educate the market around the acceptance of these newer building methodologies and technologies, but importantly, do everything in our power in order to enable us to have access to cheaper global funding that is very much ring-fenced
for green buildings. Thank you.
Powerful, powerful. Thank you so much. You've touched on some powerful key points there, which brings me to my next question. And I'll start first with Dr. Prisca. She can get ready for that. So, while delivering housing, how do we ensure resilient infrastructure in terms of building and also the maintenance of those?
Yeah, you tend to throw me into the infrastructure side, but I wanted to say that the rental market is where the opportunities are. I wanted to contribute to the past. There are many people, funders, who are looking for a product where investors can actually invest in. So when you look at rental market, one can develop those and then repackage those into a product where the residential REITs can come in and buy those for rental. So there are a lot of green money that is looking for projects that can qualify into the social component of ESG. And I think home ownership is overrated in a way, because everyone is looking to own a home. And I think we are all trying to create home ownership. And I think that's why many people don't have homes. And I think right now, many people are renting somewhere. So when we create houses for rental, it actually lubricates the market. And funders are there to sort of mimic the bond market because of the rental component. So somehow, I feel like we must go back to the drawing board and really change the culture from ownership, home ownership, into closing more into the rental market.
Okay.
Maybe you want to say something.
Yes, please.
And I think we as a country have made, it's not a mistake, but it's just this thing of not understanding that housing is an economic asset. It's not a consumption good. You need to be able to use access to a house so that you can facilitate other access. So this idea that there's a housing ladder that we must unlock is an important one. But you only unlock that housing ladder by ensuring that the entry point, which is rental, allows the person to get the social mobility they need to buy if they want to buy. Because buying is an option. I have a house. I wish I didn't, because now the interest rates and the rates that I have to pay to the city, etc., it's expensive, but it's an asset that I appreciate because I have managed to move socially to get there. But that's not the reality of most South Africans. And I think for us, our role in infrastructure development in terms of housing is that we have to make sure that these assets are in places where people can access work opportunity, they can access income opportunity, that we support enterprise development. And if you see the number of property entrepreneurs that are entering the space and they're starting to develop assets that can, mean that their families are better off than they were 2 years, 3 years ago. It's a focus that we need to think of as a country to say, if we are serious about economic growth, it must happen at a local level, and it must mean that every infrastructure investment should be viewed with the lens of an economic asset, not a consumption good.
Okay, so back to wanna go? Discussion, we can go.
Thank you, Chair. I think I will not undo what has been so eloquently positioned, but I wanted to lean back on a comment that Azola mentioned around the, having green buildings and so on. And I wanted to use the opportunity to put it out there to our GPA partners to say, where there is a need for alternate energy in some of the projects, we do have a fund available through the DTIC. You would have heard what the Minister of Finance said in his budget speech, that there are funds now set aside for the deployment of solar. And it is, as Azola was alluding to, concessionary in that it is responsive. So there's an opportunity, and I think it should be seized, and I don't want to lose the opportunity to spread the message to the stakeholders in the room. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, okay. I love this. Yes, Miss Mandy?
I want to lead back to the collaborations. I think it's important for those kind of, when green comes in, that collaborations and strategic partnerships are already in place. Because often what happens is you're applying for funding, and then they say, oh, there's an opportunity for green, and now you apply for funding there. And it just seems like you're applying for funding in 3 different places. So some kind of concerted effort to consolidate this would be great. Another kind of stand I'd like to put in words is that when we talk about green financing, particularly from international funders that come in, I think that should be concessionary rate should be based on those. And the reason being is, if we remember why this climate finance is coming in the first place, is because Africa was put, emerging economies were put on the back foot because of industrialization. But now we're saying we want to be green, and people are lending us money, and we're paying them for the damage that they've done. I mean, does this make sense to you? So we need to be more strong in our negotiations and unified in those negotiations.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So let's take the conversation to the ground, down to the ground. Now, as funders in your respective, institutions, what are the key challenges in delivering housing projects, for example? Support like bulk services, what are such as bulk services, the infrastructure as a whole. I think let's drill into that, because I think some of our developers, that's one of the restrictions to entry and to play in the space. So thank you.
You touched a pain point. I think that would be much better as a country if we didn't have these challenges. Municipal planning processes are painful, they're expensive. I think that we've regulated ourselves into poor growth, a lack of growth. A bit more out of the box. If you look at townships, for instance, we can't leave them behind anymore. And the only way you can support economic growth in townships is to ensure that the town planning schemes allow for that. So townships need densification. There's just no other way of looking at it. We can't afford the sprawl that's continuing post-democracy. So we need to go back to our existing townships that have infrastructure, bulk services, improve that bulk service, but also allow them to densify those things. Bring in mixed-use developments where people can use this term loosely, but live, play, and work is available. People need to be able to be in the township and not stay in the corner in as well the whole day. You need to be able to find a job in the township without having to travel out and incur the cost of travel. But I wanted to speak earlier about, somebody asked, what do you do in the private sector to access funding? If you look just at the impact space, investment space, Zama, apparently, which is where we come from, have recently indicated that it's a 53 trillion US dollar market.
Wow.
So there is money available. The challenge with South Africa is apparently that we fail on measuring this impact. So we need to demonstrate that we're going for us to be able to access that money. Because money, somebody used a term earlier that says cheap financing. I don't think there's anything as cheap financing. There's properly structured financing, depending on the need. So we can structure financing to make it accessible for different needs and for different projects. provided we are able to tell the story. I think Mandy said that, to tell the story of the good things that we're doing in affordable housing, in township development, in densification, in inner city regeneration, in job creation, in supporting women, in energy. I mean, here in South Africa, when we talk ESG, for us, it's not just environmental in its broad sense, because environmental, yes, environmental change is an issue. I think it's a crisis. In fact, it's not an issue, but ours is an energy crisis. It's not just environmental broadly. And obviously, collaborating on how we do that and make sure that we provide energy and educate clever will be important. Our G is not about governance. Back to your question of what the issues are. Our G is not governance broadly, it's government. That's our G. The problem that we must deal with is the lack of efficiency at government level. This is the truth. An ordinary South African deals with government at local levels. You don't know about national, you have to go to Pretoria to talk to somebody. Local government must work. That is the only way. But we understand that these things are complex, they are big. That's why it's important that we partner with local government to deliver their services. They need to recognize that. I mean, we have a metric that we try to measure called fiscal impact. We say to them, we take a building in the inner city, we repurpose it. It was before maybe hijacked, not paying rates and taxes. We now go and repurpose it, it's now paying rates and taxes. It's contributing to the bottom line of the That bottom line means the city must worry itself about zoning and rezoning because it wants that money to come in. Politicians or government officials. I'm not pro-growth and I'm about pro-development and unlocking these blockages and realizing that their role is not to come up with fancy plans, no. Their role is simply to deliver daily on the work that they're charged with, on the work that we pay for as ratepayers. That's all they need to do. Pick up the rubbish on Thursday, that's what you need to do. And do it every Thursday. Provide water and electricity consistently. Not, because we understand the issue now that I have made. The point is, if we all did what we need to do, I think as a country, we'll go for it.
Maybe you touched on an important point, and the townships being invested into is very important. I think something that people need to consider in funding institutions, private developers, the whole range of stakeholders in this regard need to look at the priority development areas and the restructuring zones. Those are set out for a reason. They are open for possibly relooking and expansion into more township-related areas, but I think those are definitely two important developmental areas that people do need to consider.
Thank you.
So just going back to local municipality, in fact, we recognize that as a challenge. And we, as the GPF, have embarked we've got an HR specialist now, where we're looking to do MOUs with naturals and districts and smaller municipalities. We're always looking for a work stream process where our developers, if they've submitted something, will let us know and we can assist them in terms of fast tracking that. So we've seen that as a challenge and we're trying to address that within the parameters that currently exist within the GPF. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Mayekiso.
Thank you very much. Just to go back to the G, our G. I think where we are facing challenges, specifically as the NHFC, right, is around, so our social housing institution funding at the moment, so just as a general thing, there is a lag between the projects that we approve and the disbursements that we do. And that lag exists principally
because of these issues where, a project has a condition precedent that says we will only be able, yes, we've approved you, but we need for certain things to be in place prior to us disbursing your funding. Chief of which is installation of bulk services. So typically, that process takes a while, and it's highly problematic. We have a backlog with respect to delivery of even the fully subsidized housing. And at the moment, we sit with a problem where, and now this is delivered at provinces, right, at provincial level. So there's something called an irrevocable undertaking that provinces need to approve. And how this works is that if a contractor has been awarded a tender to deliver subsidy housing, RDP housing, if the NHFC, we do not have access to the bank account in which the money from government, from that particular province is going to land, because remember, we provide a subsidy to these contractors, okay? So at a point where, from a cash flow point of view, at a point where we've injected capital, we've given them the bridging finance, because they get paid upon certain milestones, delivery milestones. Whereas our funding we provide upfront, right? But to the extent that we don't have access to that bank account where the money is going to land once the province pays that contractor, then we don't have comfort that we'll be able to recover it, right? So we have this requirement for that irrevocable undertaking to be granted by the province, in the absence of which then we can't find SHIs, these subsidies. In fact, if we look at our book right now, and it sits at about 4.2 billion rand, we find it very little in the way of these, contractors because of this problem. Where we are performing, I must say, in the instance of Gauteng, we're doing relatively okay in Gauteng, but generally, ours is a national mandate at the end of the day. So we really need for the provinces to come to the party in this particular respect. If we are truly, and we say, we are a developmental state, we want to see development, but there are all these bottlenecks in the system. And I'm not sure whether the right hand is not talking to the left. I'm not sure what is at play here, but we certainly do require the intervention. I think the other area, just to touch on collaboration and accessing private sector funding sources. There is the retirement fund sector as well, by the way, which has some 9 trillion rand in assets under management. And Regulation 28, which governs principally institutional investors, specifically pension funds, has recently been updated to essentially ring-fence 45% of those assets under management towards infrastructure in particular. And this also incorporates social infrastructure, which is our infrastructure category, the delivery of housing. But where the issues lie there, once again, it has to do with bankability of projects. So those conditions precedent that I was talking about, we really need to start focusing on addressing these bottlenecks if we are to deliver on this. We have a target as an ecosystem right now of delivering 150,000 units on average up until 2032. We're currently at 20,000. So how are we going to get to 150,000 if these bottlenecks continue to exist? Thank you.
Powerful. Thank you. Thank you. The role of GPF and developers. So what is the role of GPF and developers in service delivery in cities across the province? And that's the last discussion, and we'll start with Mr. Shiraaz. Thank you, sir.
I think that obviously the role of the GPF is we play in the funding space, but it doesn't end there because it's a value chain. So we have almost a red riding hood system. Developers will be everything you want them to be when they make the application. And then comes the next phase of construction. Then the process of procuring funding is maybe 6 months. Process of construction is maybe 12 months, 18 months, depending on the size of the project. But for the rest of that life of that project, for the next 20 years, we expect commitment from our developers to pay back the money.
Pay back the money, right?
Really, because in this rate, I think it's in the way back. The developer will be whatever you want it to be when they make an application. But that commitment to pay back the money is critical. And for dear to us, in size and nature as the GPF. And let me say why I say that. Because the GPF is so unique. There's no institution in the country like the GPF. We play this facilitative role between developer and the senior funder. I mean, the NEF can smile when they partner with GPF. We take a 30% stake, we take the second mortgage one. So obviously, they can either put in 60% and get 100% covered. What a pleasure. Tough as well. That's why they come to the GPF. Because that's the role we have. But it is critical for our developers to know that in order for the GPF to continue sustainably, we need to collect the money we put out. Without that, we bust.
I think I wanted to just add to the point that I think we've seen it with our Instituto project because it has GPF and other funding with this sort of government. It becomes a moral hazard, in our country because people hear subsidy, they hear government, they think it's free, I should do it. We always say to our government partners or partners in the DFI space that we need to make sure it's not about education. I think we take this issue for granted and say we need to educate people because they need to know they need to pay. No, we need to take action. When somebody doesn't pay foreclose, consequence to not paying that will change. Because what they're doing is that they're closing the space for the next time. Yeah. For the good problem. Yes. This is, and people will hate here in South Africa, people follow you and they shoot you because you said something they didn't like. But the point is, we cannot go anywhere as a country if we continue like this. This moral hazard of saying it's government money, therefore I'm entitled to it, I'm not going to pay it, must stop. It's as simple as that.
Sure.
You know, how I wish with respect to our non-performing SHIs, we could foreclose and sell them off. We're not allowed to.
Yeah, I think the moral hazard needs some greater thinking. But I think working more collaboratively, you've highlighted kind of the wins we've been able to achieve, but I think there's scope for us to collectively solve for some of those issues by sharing lessons learned from a post-investment perspective and a monitoring perspective and staying close to the money to ensure the collective sustainability of organizations. And I think this approach that the GPF has adopted is so empowering because it's so catalytic in unlocking so many other participants to come into the parties, highlighted how we work with their junior funding and our senior finance that comes in. And if there's anybody in the room, or perhaps it's something that we can agitate for, to see more of these models being replicated in other provinces so that we can see, similar success. And so for us as the NEF, we look forward to the partnership, and we will continue to do what we've been doing by way of, being mindful of environmental, social, and governance aspects. you look at our balance or our financial statements, you'll see that we've had an unaudited audit opinion, so unqualified audit opinion for close to 20 years now. So that makes us a reputable partner, and I think there's scope for us to really leverage off what we have in this partnership and crowd in more funders so that we can deliver more of the social housing units. Our speaker earlier on was highlighting, where some of the gaps are, and I think we can never rest because there'll always be work, and together we can go so much further. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.